"You're my obedient wife now," said the lone cowboy after saving the Apache beauty. He didn't pull her from death to play hero. He did it to own her, to drag her into a life she never chose. But when she stood back up, blood on her lip and fire in her eyes, obedience wasn't what rose inside her. Beneath the dust, something far more dangerous began to breathe. If he thinks saving her gives him the right to claim her, what will he do when she refuses to kneel? The tin cup hit the ground, rolling across sun-baked dirt until it lodged against a boot heel. The woman didn't look at it. She stood with her wrists bound, rope cutting into skin rubbed raw by hours of struggle. Her hair clung to her face, streaked with sweat and dust. Each breath shallow, like the earth had stolen most of her air already. The cowboy didn't speak at first. He just watched her, hat brim shadowing eyes that didn't blink often. Around them, the land stretched empty, sky too wide, silence too loud, the kind of silence that made a person feel smaller than their own shadow. Moments ago, she had been cornered by traders who saw her not as human, but as something to barter. He'd ridden through gunfire to pull her away, dragging her from a fate worse than the desert sun. The traders lay scattered in the dust now, some groaning, some still. The firefight had been brief, brutal, and final. But freedom wasn't what followed. He stepped closer, boot crushing the tin cup flat with a metallic crack. "You're safe," he said. But it didn't sound like kindness. It sounded like possession. She lifted her head slowly. Even bound, her spine remained unbroken, straight as a spear. The wind caught her hair, revealing bruises along her jaw. She didn't thank him. She didn't lower her gaze. She only asked one question, voice hoarse from thirst. "For what price?" He studied her, expression unreadable. "You owe me your life," he said, "and a life like yours needs a place to belong." Her lips parted, dry and cracked. Belong. A word meant to sound like mercy, but heavy like a chain. His hand brushed the rope around her wrists, not gentle, testing the knot like a man checking the reins of a horse he just bought. "From this moment on," he said, voice low, "you're my wife. You walk where I walk. Obedience comes before freedom." She didn't flinch, didn't plead. She just stood tall, rope biting deeper as she pulled her shoulders back. And in that small defiance, the air shifted, like dust rising before a storm no man could control. The rope left raw rings around her wrists. He cut them with a small knife, slow and quiet, then stepped back like a man measuring a fence he had just mended. "Drink," he said. He set the canteen in her hands. She didn't thank him. She took 2 small sips and wet her lips with a third. The sun hammered down. The dead traders lay where they fell, their rifles half buried by dust. "Food first," he said. "Then we ride." "Ride where?" she asked. "Home," he said. "Whose home?" she asked. "Ours," he said. "Mine." A fly crawled along the tin cup near her heel. She lifted it and set it upright. The small act felt like claiming a square inch of earth that did not belong to anyone else. He watched the gesture. His voice cooled. "You owe me for the rescue," she said. "For your life," he said. She stared at the rope he had cut. The fibers curled like tiny thorns. Her wrists stung, but her back stayed straight. He tore a strip from a clean cloth and wrapped her hands. The knots were neat, not tight, an odd tenderness from a man who spoke like iron. "Rest a breath," he said. She stood instead. Dust lifted from her dress like smoke. A hawk circled high. The land listened. "You'll walk with me," he said. "Walk beside," she said. "Obedience first," he said. "Freedom first," she said. He studied her face. His jaw flexed. He did not raise his hand. He picked up a fallen hat from the dirt and shook out the grit. "Wear it," he said. "The sun cuts deep." She took it and set it on the ground at her feet. "I choose shade," she said, "not orders." He looked past her, across the flats, toward the thin line of town. His eyes narrowed. Smoke rose there. Not fire. Cook fires. Midday work. The world kept turning. A glint caught the light near the trader's wagon. A metal box sat under the seat, hinge bent, lid ajar. He kicked it open. Inside lay papers tied with string, a small stamp, a stick of red wax. He held up a page. County seal, transfer notes. Names written in a clerk's hand. Prices in a column neat as fence posts. Trade documents, he said. Not mine, she said. He thumbed through them. Some were old, some fresh. One carried a mark in a rough hand, not a name, a cross. He held the page out. "Recognize this?" he asked. The wind answered for her. Sand peppered their boots. She did not touch the paper. "Those men carried law," he said. "Those men carried chains," she said. He folded the papers and slipped them into his coat. He took a breath that tasted like iron and small regret. "We need the registry," he said. "I sign. Then no one touches you. I am not yours to sign," she said. His eyes stayed flat, but his tone softened. "Papers protect. Bad men read them. Good men write them. Good men do not need them," she said. He strapped the canteen to his saddle. He checked his rifle and his rope coil. He looked at the sky. A thin veil of cloud crossed the sun. Heat eased a fraction. "Mount up," he said. "I walk," she said. He frowned. "Distance is hard. Hard is better than owned," she said. He did not argue. He tied his horse to the wagon tongue and walked with her. Sand squeaked under their steps. A grasshopper clicked across the trail like a misfired trigger. "Why did you come back?" she asked. He shrugged, saw dust, heard shouting, "Found you." "You wanted a wife," she said. "I wanted to stop a sale," he said. "Then I chose a life." "Mine," she said. "Ours," he said. She shook her head. A single, sharp motion. The hat on the ground rolled and settled against her boot. "Choose better words," she said. He didn't answer. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small tin of salve. He unscrewed it and held it out. "For the rope burns," he said. She took it after a pause, dabbed it with 2 fingers. The sting cooled. The dust clung to the ointment and made a thin grey paste. A distant bell sounded from the ridge road. Not the church, a wagon bell. The kind that rattled when the wheel nails were loose. "Hear that?" he asked. "I hear," she said. He scanned the horizon. A shape moved along the road. A mule, thin and stubborn, pulling a small cart with a canvas top and a painted sign. Letters faded, but still proud. "Circuit office," he said. "Registrar." She stiffened. "No." He spoke like a man naming weather. "Papers settle trouble. Papers start trouble," she said. The cart turned toward them across the flats. The mule plodded. The canvas flapped. A neat man in a coat sat straight, hands light on the reins, a wooden box beside him. "He'll ask questions," the cowboy said. "He'll write answers," she said. She stepped away from the road. He matched her step. The registrar raised a hand, polite as a schoolmaster. "Afternoon," the registrar called. "All well, we're moving on," the cowboy said. The registrar smiled thin. "The county prefers clarity. New faces need notes." "No notes," she said. The registrar studied the cut ropes on the ground. "Unpleasant business," he said. "Happily concluded, I trust. Happily free," she said. The registrar nodded at the papers bulging in the cowboy's coat. "If those are what I think, I can record nothing," she said. The registrar's tone stayed pleasant. "Without record, confusion starts fights. With record, peace stays." "Peace for who?" she asked. "For all who sign," he said. She looked at the cowboy. He did not look away. He said softly, "I sign to keep you safe." "Safety is not silence," she said. The registrar cleared his throat, cheerful again. "We can settle this quick. A contract saves trouble. A marriage saves tongues. Towns talk less when things look tidy." The word clicked like a trap. "Marriage." She folded her arms. "I will not be a picture for tongues." The registrar lifted the wooden box and set it on the wagon seat. He opened it to show a seal, a book, a bottle of ink, a neat stack of forms. He held up a blank page like a man showing bread to the hungry. "One mark," he said. "That's all." The wind fell still. Even the hawk paused in its circle. The cowboy's jaw worked. He said nothing. The registrar looked between them. "Your choice, but make it soon. The road fills. Voices carry." He set the blank form on a board. The ink shone like a small, dark lake. He dipped the pen and waited, smile polite, eyes firm. A second sound rose behind the bell. Hooves, closer. Another wagon. Leather creaked. Harness jingled. The registrar glanced past them and straightened his coat. "Company," he said. "Good. Witnesses." She turned toward the sound. Dust climbed from the flats in a slow, curling ribbon. A badge glinted in that dust like a coin tossed high. The registrar's smile widened. Ah, perfect timing. County eyes to see the mark. A shadow fell across the paper on the board. It wasn't the registrar's, it wasn't the Cowboy's. It was a wide shadow from a rider who had stopped just behind them, boots creaking, spur bells quiet as snow. A voice spoke, calm and sharp. "Who is binding who?" The registrar turned, pen still lifted. The new rider sat tall in the saddle, coat dark, hat low, face shadowed. His horse breathed slow, steady. The badge on his vest wasn't town issue. It bore a different crest, county circuit law, higher than the registrar, higher than local papers. The registrar adjusted his tone. "Routine registration," he said. "Voluntary." The rider dismounted with slow precision, boots crunching gravel. "Voluntary," he repeated, like he was tasting the word for lies. The registrar cleared his throat. "The lady is under informal care. We're sealing it with ink to prevent dispute." The rider stepped closer. He looked first at the girl, not at the man. His eyes tracked the rope burns, the dust, the set of her jaw. He spoke to her directly. "Do you speak for yourself?" She met his gaze. "I do." "Did you ask for his name on your life?" he asked. "I asked for neither name nor chain," she said. The registrar lifted the form. "It's protection, miss. Better bound by one than hunted by many." "Bound is bound," she said. The rider's eyes shifted to the Cowboy. "And you? Are you binding her?" The Cowboy's voice stayed low. "I offered paper to keep men from taking her." "Offered or imposed?" the rider asked. The Cowboy didn't answer. The registrar forced a smile. "Sheriff recommended this. Keep stability. She needs a mark. Without mark, she is claimed by the county." The rider looked down at the paper. "And with mark, she is claimed by him." The registrar hesitated. "Words." "Paper doesn't care for words," the rider said. "Paper cares for signatures. Ownership wears many coats." The wind kicked dust across the board, coating the blank form. The ink bottle rattled. The girl stepped forward. Her shadow crossed the page. She spoke softly, but the air carried it like a blade. "My life does not fit in your lines." The registrar stiffened. "Without record, there will be pursuit." "Then let them pursue truth," she said. The rider's eyes sharpened. "You refuse contract. I refuse to be spoken for," she said. He looked at the Cowboy. "And you, will you speak over her?" The Cowboy's coil of rope hung loose at his side. He stared at the paper, then at her wrists. "I said she walks free. Free is not a word you own," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then I own nothing." The registrar tapped the board. "That won't stand. Counties do not let matters drift." The rider's voice cut through. "Then we enter the witness clause." The registrar frowned. "That requires community." The rider glanced at the horizon. Dust trails from town drew closer. Figures on horseback. Town hands. Maybe the badge holder. Maybe eyes who saw the scene at the well. "Community comes," the rider said, "and they will hear her speak. Not you." The registrar stepped back, Hansine uneasy. "If they choose mob law, law is what people agree to stand for," the rider said. "Let them stand." The girl did not look at the crowd coming. She looked only at the horizon where the land ran free. "If I must mark something today," she said, "then I mark this." She bent, picked up a stone, and pressed it into her palm until it cut skin. Blood welled. She let it fall onto the blank page, a small red drop staining the corner. "This is my name." "Not yours to write." The registrar recoiled. "That ruins the form." The rider nodded. "Then it cannot be misused." The Cowboy stepped beside her. "No pen after blood." The registrar sputtered. "This is not procedure." "Procedure changes when eyes see," the rider said. The dust cloud grew nearer. Voices could be heard now, faint, calling across the plain, the seamstress's voice among them, the badge holders, others. Witnesses indeed. The registrar gathered his things face tight. If this goes wrong, the county will fine every house in town. Let them send paper, the rider said, and let someone burn it. The registrar glared at the girl. You'll regret making a spectacle. She turned to him. I lived as shadow. Spectacle is a kind of light. The registrar mounted his cart. His mule snorted, irritated. He snapped the reins sharply. As he rolled away, he hissed under his breath, paper always returns. The rider watched him go, then turned to the cowboy. Will you walk as shadow or companion? The cowboy looked at the girl. I walk until I'm dismissed. The girl considered him for a long moment. Then she started walking again, not toward town, not toward the ridge rider, but onward across the open plain. She did not invite. He did not claim. He simply walked beside. Behind them, the wind lifted the blood-marked form from the board. It tumbled once, twice, then caught on a thorn bush, paper flapping like a torn flag. From town, the bell sounded just once. Not warning, not command, just a single note, like a book closing. The rider mounted his horse again. He stayed where he was, watching them go, making no move to follow, not judge, not owner, witness. The girl did not look back. The cowboy did, just once. Only once. Then they both faced forward and kept walking, their shadows stretching longer with each step. The sun lowered, the land opened, and no one spoke the word obedient again. The plain widened ahead of them, gold and dry beneath a late sun. Clouds gathered on the far horizon, low and heavy like a warning. The girl's steps remained steady. The cowboy matched her pace, a half stride behind, careful not to overtake her. They passed a dead tree bleached white by seasons of wind. Its branches curled like fingers pointing nowhere. A raven sat on one limb, watching without sound. When they drew near, it took wing and wheeled overhead, a dark shape against pale sky. She said, "If you plan to speak, speak now. Words lose weight the longer they wait." He walked with his eyes on the dust. "I planned nothing. Planning is a chain," she said. "Then I wear none," he replied. She glanced at his arm, still bound in linen. "Pain changes how men speak." "Pain teaches," he said. "Pain also lies," she said. He looked out across the land. The faint trail of the registrar's cart vanished into heat shimmer. Town was only a smudge behind them now. The smoke from cook fires had thinned. "You still believe I want to own you," he said. "Belief is not the word," she said. "I saw your eyes when you said wife." He walked in silence for a time. The crunch of their boots on dry soil filled the space between. Finally he said, "I spoke with rope still on your wrists. That was my failure." She nodded once. "Words spoken over rope mean little." "Then let my silence mend what words broke," he said. "Silence is not enough," she said. He nodded again, accepting. "Then I carry what I broke until you set it down." She kept her eyes forward. The land ahead held a small ridge with brush gathered at the base. Shelter, perhaps. Coyotes moved between the shrubs, grey shapes in the grass. They watched but did not approach. She said, "Do you regret killing those men?" "No," he said. "Do you regret cutting the rope?" she asked. "No," he said. "Do you regret speaking wife?" she asked. He paused. "I regret speaking before I understood what freedom cost to someone who had none." She slowed her pace just enough that their steps aligned more evenly. Not invitation, adjustment. The wind picked up. Thin sand swirled in small spirals around their feet. Far off, thunder muttered. Rain threatened. But on land like this, rain was more rumor than promise. She looked at the sky. "Storm comes." He nodded. "We find cover." She led them toward the ridge. The brush parted to reveal an old lean-to made from scrap wood and corrugated metal. Someone had once camped here. A fire pit lay cold, ash scattered by wind. She stepped inside the partial shade. He remained at the edge. "Enter if you will," she said, "but do not claim it." He stepped under the scrap roof and set down his pack. He didn't sit. She lowered herself onto a flat stone and drew her knees close, conserving warmth before the night chill. He took a place near the entrance, back to the wind. "It's small," he said. "Small spaces hold truer words," she said. "Then I will speak plain," he said. She waited. He kept his eyes on the plain beyond the shelter. "When I said wife, I meant shield. Law listens to that word. Law listened to chains too, she said. He nodded. Then Law is no friend to either of us. She watched him, weighing. She said, if you walk beside me, you do not speak ownership even in thought. He met her gaze. Thought is harder to tame than tongue. Then tame it, she said. Wind brushed through the shelter, lifting a corner of the metal. It rattled like thin thunder. He reached out and held it steady, fingers pressed against rust. She said, if you bind yourself to me, it is not as husband, not as savior, not as master. As what then, he asked. As witness, she said. Witness, he repeated. One who sees and does not erase, she said. He let the words settle between them. Witness was not possession. It was responsibility without control, like holding a flame without closing your fist around it. He said, I accept witness. She studied him. That is not for you to accept alone. Then test me, he said. She folded her arms. A witness does not step ahead, does not pull from behind. He walks and speaks only when asked. Then I am quiet until you call me, he said. She nodded once. Thunder growled again, closer now. The sky darkened at the edges like ink, spreading. She reached into the pack he carried and pulled out a strip of dried meat. She broke it in half and set one piece on a stone between them. Share, she said, not command, not offering, equal place. He picked up the piece without thanks, without apology. They chewed in silence while the wind shifted, bringing with it the scent of distant rain and wood smoke. Night would come soon. The girl pulled her knees closer. The man adjusted the metal sheet so the storm wind wouldn't rip it free. Neither asked whom the shelter belonged to, because for the first time since the rope fell, nothing was being owned. The first drops of rain came slow, tapping the metal roof like cautious footsteps. Wind shifted, colder now, carrying the smell of wet earth. The girl lifted her face slightly, letting a single drop hit her skin. She didn't flinch. Water was rare. Even a storm could feel like mercy if it didn't turn cruel. The cowboy sat with his back to the opening, shoulder against the lean-to frame. He watched the horizon while pretending to rest. His wounded arm ached, throbbing in time with his heartbeat. He didn't tighten the bandage. Pain reminded him to stay awake. She spoke without looking at him. You watch like someone who expects a shadow to rise from the ground. Shadows follow blood, he said. Then you carry one, she said. He nodded once. So do you. She touched her wrist where the rope had bitten. The flesh was still red, healing slow. We carry what we walked through, she said, but we don't bow to it. The rain picked up, pattering steady against the roof. The sound filled the small space between them. He looked at her, but only briefly. She stared out at the plain, eyes sharp, tracking movement only she seemed to sense. You think they follow? He asked. They always follow, she said, even when they turn their horses away. Paper rides behind. Paper can't track footprints, he said. Paper tracks blood, she said. He pulled the coat tighter around his arm. If they come again, we stand, he said. She shook her head. If they come again, we don't stand, we move. He studied her expression. You mean run? I mean walk where they do not understand the ground, she said. Walk where law does not write. He nodded. Then lead. She didn't move yet. She listened. The sky rumbled again, and lightning cracked far to the east. Coyotes yipped at the sound, unsettled. She asked, Why did you shoot? He didn't pretend not to understand. At the well, I thought they would take you, he said. You thought you owned the right to stop them, she said. He let the words sit. Rain hammered harder, a sudden downpour turning dust into paste. He spoke slowly. I thought death was worse than capture. She looked at him then, and is it? He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know. She said, Death ends a chain. Capture teaches you how to carry it. The thunder rolled again. A jagged line of lightning split the clouds and vanished. The storm beat down harder. Wind drove rain sideways. The shelter shuddered. He pushed his shoulder against the frame to brace it. The wood groaned, but held. She stood and stepped to the edge of the lean-to, letting the rain soak through her hair, washing blood and dust from her skin. The water trailed down her arms like new markings. "You could ride away now," she said. "Back to town. They would write you clean. Say you tried." He didn't move, "And leave you to walk alone." "I have walked alone longer than you've held a rope," she said. He gave a faint, tired smile. "Then walk ahead, and I'll follow until you tell me to stop." She considered. Rain dripped from her jaw. "You still call it following? Then what is it called?" he asked. "Walking until witness earns trust," she said. He nodded. Trust was not a word he spoke often. It felt heavier than a rifle. The storm eased suddenly, like a hand lifting. Rain slowed to a mist, then stopped. The land steamed in the fading light, releasing a low fog that hugged the earth. She reached into the mud and drew a line with her finger. It curved, winding like a stream. "This is the trail they ride," she said. "Straight. Easy, predictable." Then she dragged the line sideways, cutting it off sharply into the brush. "This is ours." He leaned closer. "Off the road," he said. "Off the maps," she replied. He looked out at the world beyond the road. Brush thick, land uneven, no clear path. Hard country, no papers traveled there. "Hard walking," he said. "Better hard than owned," she said. He stood. The motion was slow but steady. He slung the pack over his good shoulder and waited for her to move. She stepped out first, barefoot now, toes gripping wet earth, claiming it without permission. Mud splashed. Her coat dragged through damp grass. He followed, boots sinking into the softened ground. The lean-to stood behind them, empty, a ghost of shelter no longer needed. Thunder rumbled one last time, distant now. The raven from before circled above once, then glided in their direction, as if guiding or judging. She didn't look back at the shelter. He did, just for a heartbeat, then turned away. They left the road behind and walked into land where paper could not follow. And the earth closed behind them like a book being shut. The ground grew soft underfoot as they left the beaten path. Grass rose in tangled clumps. Brush snagged their clothes like small hands. Each step forward sounded different here, less echo, more hush, as if the land itself absorbed noise like a secret. The girl walked with steady pace, feet sure even on uneven soil. She did not look back. The cowboy kept a step to the side rather than behind, matching her rhythm, careful not to step where she stepped, letting her path belong to her alone. They passed through a stretch where the earth dipped into a shallow basin. Water gathered thin like glass. She knelt and cupped her hands, drinking slow. He waited until she rose again before touching the water himself. He didn't speak thanks. He didn't need to. She studied his posture. "You hesitate," she said. "About what?" he asked. "About following ground that has no trail," she said. He looked across the brush. "Trail is what feet decide, not what maps show." She gave a small nod, the first sign of something like agreement. They climbed a rise, rocks jutting like broken teeth. Wind cut sharper here, carrying the scent of cedar and wet sage. The sky overhead was bruised purple, clouds crawling low like tired beasts. Rain could return without warning. At the top of the rise, they paused. From here the land stretched far, a sea of brush and stone. No roads, no fences, no smoke. Freedom looked wide, but also empty. She asked, "Does emptiness frighten you more than chains?" "Chains leave walls. Walls can be fought," he said. "Emptiness just watches." She looked out across the land. Emptiness is honest, chains pretend. He let that settle. A hawk screamed somewhere overhead, cutting through the air. She tilted her head slightly. "Watch the sky," she said. "Birds warn before men appear." He scanned the horizon. "I see no riders. That is when they are closest," she said. They descended the far side of the rise. The wind died here. Sound grew thick, close to the ground. It felt like walking into another world, one carved from quiet. As they moved deeper, the cowboy slowed. His injured arm throbbed worse with the cold. He hid the pain, but she noticed the way his jaw clenched. She said, "Sit, I can walk," he answered. "Sit," she repeated. He sat. She crouched beside him, tearing a strip from the coat's lining. She dipped it in a muddy patch and pressed it over his bandage. He winced at the cold. She held it there until the bleeding eased. "Why mend me?" he asked. "Because a witness who falls is useless," she said. He let out a breath, not quite a laugh, more like a release. She stepped back and stood. The light caught her face, making the marks from the rope stand out like war paint. "You think this is over?" she said. "No," he said. "You think papers won't find their way across this land?" she asked. "They will try," he said. She nodded. "Then we must keep moving, not to escape, to outlive." He stood again. Pain followed, but he didn't mention it. Pain was part of the ground now. They walked through a stand of young pines growing crooked, shaped by wind. The branches whispered overhead, leaves rattling like bones. She moved like someone who had walked here before, even if she had never seen it. He let her lead without question. As dusk deepened, they stopped at a clearing sheltered by leaning stone. She studied the space. "This will hold night," she said. He set down his pack and gathered dry brush. She arranged it into a fire circle but did not strike a spark yet. He looked at the kindling. "If we light, smoke will mark us." "Smoke always marks," she said, "but warmth keeps feet from freezing into one place." He nodded. She struck flint against steel, sparks catching on the dry grass. The fire lit without fuss, flickering low. They settled opposite one another, flame between. The light flickered across their faces, cutting deep shadows into their features. The night noises of the wild rose around them, crickets in the brush, a distant howl, the rustle of something creeping just beyond sight. The girl held her hands toward the flame, but did not extend them fully. Fire, like men, burns when trusted too close. The cowboy watched the sparks swirl upward into the dark. "We will have no roof for a long time," he said. "Roofs belong to towns. Towns belong to ledgers," she said. He nodded. "Then where do we belong?" She looked into the dark beyond the firelight. "Where we choose," she said, "not where we are told." He leaned back against the stone. His voice softened. "Then choose." She didn't answer immediately. The fire cracked once, ember spitting. After a moment, she said, "I choose forward, until the land accepts us or swallows us." "And you?" he asked. He met her eyes. "I choose to walk until I am no longer carrying the voice that said, 'obedient.'" She watched him a moment longer. Then she lay down with her back to the fire, facing the wild. The cowboy set his hat over his eyes but kept his hand near his rifle. Coyotes cried out in the distance, thin and lonely. Wind bent the grass. Firelight flickered. The ground held them, not as property, as travelers. Night deepened until the sky turned ink black, scattered with sharp stars. The fire burned low. Just embers now, glowing like buried coals ready to wake. The air grew cold, and every breath came out in faint white clouds. The girl lay still, eyes closed, but sleep had not claimed her. She listened, not for danger alone, but for the difference between threat and life. Wind carried sounds differently in free land. Chains echoed through trees. Freedom whispered low. The cowboy sat against the rock, hat tipped forward, but his eyes remained open beneath the brim. The pain in his arm pulsed like a second heartbeat. He ignored it. After a long silence, she spoke without turning. "Are you afraid?" "Of what?" he asked. She opened her eyes, staring into the dark beyond the fire. "Of walking with someone you cannot claim." He thought on that. "No," he said. "Claiming breaks the walking." She nodded once. "Good. Then your first lesson holds." He tilted his head. "Lesson." She sat up and faced the night. "You said you would be witness. A witness does not lead. A witness does not own the road." He folded his hands. "Then I walk and see." She looked at him through firelight. "If you see truth and stay silent, you are no better than the men who held rope." He met her gaze. "I speak when asked." She looked away again. "Then listen until I ask." A distant crack echoed, not thunder, hoof on stone. Slow, careful, she stiffened. He reached for his rifle. She raised a hand. "Wait." They listened. One horse, not many, steady, deliberate, someone tracking. Not a rush, not a chase, a hunt. She glanced at his wound. "You bleed scent." Blood draws riders like smoke draws eyes. His jaw tightened. I can mask trail come morning. Morning is far, she said. He stood slowly. The fire flickered, casting his shadow long against the rock. We move now. She shook her head. Movement in darkness makes you loud. We vanish instead. He scanned the clearing. Stone wall, brush, low ground, nowhere to fully hide. She rose and pointed to a shallow depression at the base of the rock, half covered in moss and fallen pine branches. There. He moved toward it. It will not cover both. It does not need to, she said. He turned. And you? She picked up a handful of ash from the cold edge of the fire pit and smeared it across her arms, darkening her skin into shadow. I was hunted before you arrived, she said. I learned to be unseen. He hesitated. I cannot hide like that. Then be still, she said. The hoofbeats grew closer. A rider came into view at the ridge above, silhouette against the moonlight. He dismounted without haste, scanning the ground with experienced eyes. The girl crept into the brush, lowering herself until she blended with the wet earth. She flattened her breathing, becoming part of the land. The cowboy crouched in the depression, pulling branches over himself. Pain flared, but he held still. The rider walked near the fire's edge, boot crushing a coal. It hissed. He knelt and touched the warm ash, then brought his fingers to his nose. Fresh, he muttered. The girl watched through reeds, every muscle still. The rider stood and scanned the shadows. His hand rested on his rifle, not raised, confident, patient. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for possession. He stepped toward the depression. The cowboy held his breath. The rider paused, eyes tracking a faint smear of blood on a blade of grass. He followed it with slow steps, straight toward the hiding place. The girl rose from the earth like a whisper. She moved without sound until she stood behind him, a stone in her hand. He sensed her too late. He turned. She struck once, sharp and precise, not to kill, to drop him. The stone hit the base of his skull. He collapsed to one knee, groaning. The cowboy surged forward, but she raised a hand. No voice, no sound. The rider reached for his rifle. She kicked it away, swift like a hawk's strike. He grabbed her ankle. She twisted, driving her knee into his shoulder. He hit the dirt, breath forced from him. She knelt beside him. His eyes blinked open, full of pain and fury. She placed the stone on his chest. Go back, she said. You saw nothing. He spat dust. She's property. You can't, she pressed the stone harder. Say it again and you leave teeth in the dirt. His breath hitched. He stared at her, something like fear creeping into his eyes. She leaned close. Tell whoever sent you this. The girl they hunt does not kneel, and the man at her side does not leash her. He glared. I'll bring riders. Bring paper, she said. Let it burn. The cowboy stood, rifle ready. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The rider looked between them, saw no plea, no fear, only resolve. She rose and stepped back. Go. He got to his feet slowly, one hand to his head. He looked at them once, bitter and shaken, then mounted his horse and rode back toward the ridge, disappearing into the night. The girl turned to the cowboy. Witness means you speak only what you saw. He nodded. I saw you stand. Then walk, she said. They didn't return to the fire. They walked into the dark, where only the earth would remember their names. Dawn rose slow, bleeding pale light across the land like a cut being revealed. The sky shifted from charcoal to washed-out blue, and mist gathered low across the brush. Birds began their sparse morning calls, cautious and distant. The world woke without hurry. They had walked through most of the night, leaving the fire behind without turning back. The cowboy's steps dragged slightly, his wound slowing him, but he did not complain. The girl's pace remained steady, but she scanned every ridge, every shadow, reading the land like a page no law could write on. As the light grew stronger, she stopped at a ridge overlooking a dry riverbed. Below, twisted tree roots broke through the earth like old bones. She crouched and touched the soil with her fingertips, testing moisture. Here, she said. We rest until the sun climbs higher. Light hides tracks better than dark. He nodded and lowered himself to sit beneath a leaning tree. He exhaled, long and controlled, hiding the tremor in his hand. Blood had dried stiff under the bandage. He peeled it back slightly. The wound was angry and red, but not infected yet. She crouched beside him and poured a thin line of water over the cloth. He tensed but didn't pull away. She pressed new herbs against the wound, leaves crushed between her fingers until they bled green. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. She answered simply, "From those who did not survive long enough to teach." He bowed his head. "I carry that understanding." She looked at him. "Understanding is not apology. You lost blood. They lost breath." He let the words stay. Wind shifted, rustling the dry grass. She looked toward the horizon. Dust trails were faint but visible now, not from riders chasing them directly, but from another column further east. Slow, organized, not bounty men, something else. He followed her gaze. "County patrol," he said. "No," she said. "Patrols do not move in straight lines like merchants. That is registry. They spread paper like seed before they ride in." He watched the drifting dust. "Then we must stay ahead." "No," she said. "We must stop leaving a line. We leave signs that break their reading." He frowned. Signs. She rose and walked a short distance from him. She knelt and began to move stones into a pattern, 3 small, 1 large, then a space, then 2 curved. It looked like nothing. Then she swept earth over part of it with her foot, leaving only half visible. He approached. "What is it?" "A broken trail," she said. "Those who chase on paper look for straight lines. This means, I walk, but not where you think." He looked at the marks. "You speak with land," she nodded. "Paper speaks with ink, we answer with earth." He looked at the distant dust trail again. "They're still coming. They will always come," she said. "But land does not tell them truth if we teach it not to." He knelt and copied her, dragging a stone and setting it beside another. She watched. "That is too deliberate," she said. "They will see hand, not wind." He erased his mark and tried again. Rougher. "More like accident than message." "Better," she said. A pause stretched between them. Wind whistled through the dry riverbed. He looked at her, then at the horizon. "Tell me something," he said quietly. She didn't answer immediately. He continued. "When they said wife, what did that word taste like to you?" She kept her eyes on the dust trail. "Like iron," she said. "Like something meant to close around the throat." He nodded. "I spoke it like shield. You heard it like shackle." She finally looked at him. "Both are still metal." He accepted that. "Then no more metal between us." She stood. "If you speak such things again, I walk without shadow." "Then I will not speak them," he said. She studied his face a moment longer, then turned away. The ridge wind lifted her hair. Her shoulders eased just slightly, as if a stone had been removed from the pack she carried that no one could see. They began walking again, leaving the riverbed behind. Coyotes trotted in the distance, weaving between brush, watching but not approaching. Ravens followed overhead, dark specks circling slowly, their shadows gliding over stone and grass like quiet omens. The sun rose higher. Heat shimmered across the plain. Paper could travel faster than men, but men could vanish where paper could not follow. They walked into that idea, not escaping, not being chased, simply choosing where footprints belonged. The cowboy glanced once more at the distant patrol dust. Then he let it go. Ahead of him, the girl moved like someone carving a line through the world without asking permission. And behind them, the earth closed each step they left, swallowing their trail like it had never been written. By midday, the sun burned high and merciless, turning the ground into cracked clay and glare. Heat shimmered across the horizon like a mirage, blurring lines between distance and sky. The girl shielded her eyes with the edge of her sleeve and angled their path toward a cluster of rock outcrops. "There," she said. "Shade." The cowboy followed, steps slower but steady. Each movement jarred his wounded arm, but he kept pace. He didn't ask to stop. He had learned that asking permission was a remnant of ownership, either to own or to be owned. Here, one simply walked until the land allowed pause. The rock formation rose jagged and strange, like ribs of some long-buried beast pushing through earth. They slipped between the stones, and cool shadows swallowed them. The sudden drop in temperature made the skin prickle. She sat on a flat rock, pulling her knees up. He stood a few paces away, scanning the open land beyond the rocks. "You still search the horizon," she said. He nodded. "It's habit." She rested her chin on her knees. Habit is what chains become when no one holds them. He considered that. "Then teach me how to unlearn." She said nothing for a long moment. Then she pointed at a sandstone wall where wind had carved hollows and curves. The rock told stories in its lines. Weather scars, pressure, time. "Read that," she said. He looked. "It's just rock." She shook her head. "It's a record that didn't ask for ink. Wind wrote it. Rain carved it. No one signed it. Yet it holds truth." He stepped closer, running his fingers along the grooves. "No straight lines. No stamps." "That is how we walk," she said. "No straight lines. No stamps." He nodded. "Then if someone writes us, they write lies." She looked out toward the horizon, where the faint dust trails still moved like threads in the distance. "Let them write lies. Truth belongs to land." He sat on a nearby rock. The stone was rough but solid. He closed his eyes, letting the heat fade from his skin. For a moment, silence held them like a cloak. Only the breeze and the distant cry of a hawk broke the stillness. After a while, she spoke again. "When they said obedient, what did that word mean to you?" He opened his eyes. "A command given without knowing the one you speak it to." "To me," she said, "it meant disappear. Make yourself small. Erase your breath so your owner doesn't notice it." He looked at her. "I didn't know." She didn't look back. "Then you will learn. To witness is to hear the shape of someone else's pain without making it your own story." He bowed his head, accepting. "I hear it now." She rested her head against the rock, eyes half-lidded. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was quiet, like buried water, deep, waiting. Hours passed like that. The sun shifted. Shadows stretched. Their breathing synced without thought. Then, faint at first, a different sound came on the wind. Not hooves, not wagons. Something softer. Voices, many, carrying across the plain in a low, distant chorus. She sat up sharply. He raised his head, listening. The wind carried words they couldn't make out, just the rhythm of speech, not pursuit. Something else. She narrowed her eyes. "That is not registry. That is movement of people, not riders." He stood and stepped toward the edge of the rocks. Beyond the glare, faint shapes began to appear. Not soldiers, not law. Figures on foot wrapped in blankets, some carrying bundles, others leading pack animals. A small caravan, slow and worn, moving west. She watched with careful eyes. "Refugees," she said quietly, "or those who refused to sign their names." The caravan moved like a snake through the grass, unhurried, tired but determined. They did not bear flags or badges. They bore silence. He looked at her. "Others walk as you do." Her voice was low. "I am not alone." Then, he nodded. "Do we approach?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Watch first. Those who survive this land trust only what walks without reaching." They stayed in the shadow of the rocks and watched the caravan pass at a distance. A child stumbled and was lifted by an older woman. A man limped with a makeshift crutch but kept walking. No one rode, everyone walked. She said, "That is how freedom looks. Not victorious, just moving." He felt something understand itself in his chest, a quiet acknowledgement. He looked at her. "Do we join them?" She shook her head. "Joining too fast is claiming. We walk near, not within. If they see us and choose, then we walk together. If not, we walk with space between." He accepted that. "Then we walk in parallel." She nodded. "Let them feel our presence like wind, not like weight." They gathered their things. Shadows lengthened. The land cooled. As the caravan moved west, they followed at a distance, neither merging nor hiding. The girl walked without hesitation, steps sure. The cowboy followed, a half-pace behind, quiet as witness, and behind them the rocks kept their own story, unmarked, unwritten, but eternal. The sun dipped again, casting long shadows over the plain. The caravan ahead moved slowly, a quiet river of footsteps winding west. The girl and the cowboy followed at a respectful distance, far enough not to be seen as threat, close enough to move with purpose. Dust rose behind the caravan, soft and golden in the fading light. A dog trotted alongside them, ribs showing beneath its coat, but its gait steady. It looked back occasionally, ears twitching, as if sensing shapes trailing behind. She watched the dog more than the people. Animals see intention before action, she said. Her eyes, fixed on the horizon, flicked to the side where the caravan's tracks were clear. She turned slightly, leading them along a parallel path, leaving their prints just far enough away that a reader would have to look twice to understand they weren't the same line. He followed, careful to match her spacing. Ahead, a woman at the rear of the caravan turned briefly, scanning the plain. Her eyes passed over them without alarm. She saw, but she did not summon. That, the girl murmured, is acceptance without invitation. He nodded. Better than papers. Paper forces place, she said. Eyes allow distance. They walked until the first night fires of the caravan flickered into life. Small, quiet flames, no large camp circle, just scattered embers where families huddled close, not for celebration, but to keep cold from their bones. The girl stopped on a rise overlooking the fires. The cowboy paused beside her. Smoke rose thin into the sky, quiet and dignified. "Do we rest?" he asked. "Here," she said, "not among them. Here, where they can see we do not demand space." He unstrapped his pack and lowered it to the ground. His movements were slow, controlled. Pain had settled into a constant throb, but he carried it with calm acceptance. She gathered dry brush from a nearby patch, careful not to break branches loudly. She did not light it yet. Fire in open land drew more than warmth. It drew judgment. Silence was a better blanket while others slept. He looked at the caravan fires. "They burn low," he said. "Low fires feed people, not pride," she said. They sat. No words for a long while. Coyotes barked in the distance, answering each other across the dark. A child from the caravan cried once, then was quieted by a lullaby in a language neither of them spoke. It sounded like a river over stone, soft, persistent. The cowboy leaned back against a rock. His eyes drifted toward the girl. She sat upright, always facing open ground, never fully relaxing. Even seated, she looked like someone still moving. He asked quietly, "Have you ever walked with others like this?" She kept her eyes on the firelight below. "Once. Long ago. Before names were taken. What happened?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. The caravan fires flickered across her face, lighting the rope scars on her wrists. Then she said, "Papers came. They wrote numbers beside names. Those who refused were made examples." He said nothing. She continued, "Some bent to survive, some vanished, some burned. I walked away before they decided for me." He swallowed. "And the ones who bent." She closed her eyes briefly. "Bending teaches the body to live, but teaches the soul to stay bowed forever." He nodded. "And those who burned?" She opened her eyes. "They died free." He looked at her. "And you?" She held his gaze. "I live free." Living free is slower than dying free, but it reaches farther. The words settled between them under the vast night sky. He felt them like a weight that steadied rather than crushed. He said quietly, "I walked roads built by law until I forgot the land beneath them had no master. That is my bending." "Then unbend," she said. He blinked. "How?" She looked to the dark ground. "Walk without waiting for permission." He let out a slow breath. "Then I will walk permissionless." She nodded once. Night deepened. A wind came cold from the north, slipping under skin and bone. The caravan fires dimmed further, sinking low to coals. The dog curled beside one of the children, head resting on its paws. The girl lay down on dry grass, back straight, facing the night. He lay a short distance away, the fireless air cold but honest. Between them nothing was signed, nothing was claimed, nothing was promised, and still they slept near, not bound, not owned, aligned. Before dawn, the world held its breath. The girl opened her eyes to the sound of something subtle, not hooves, not voices, a shift in the wind, carrying the scent of smoke from a different fire. Not caravan fire, oil fire, sharper, intentional. She sat up, hand low to the ground for balance. The cowboy stirred, waking without alarm, just awareness. "Smoke," she said. He inhaled. "That's not cooking smoke." "No," she said. "That is warning." They stood. The horizon was still dark, except for a faint ember glow to the south. Too far to be caravan, too focused to be wildfire. Someone signaled, or staked a claim. She watched the glow. That is Law's fire. Papers burn there to make room for fresh ones. He frowned. "They're preparing to write again." "Yes," she said. "They always prepare before they take." The caravan below began to stir as well. People waking slow, rolling bedding, quiet and practiced. No voices raised, no panic. They too had seen the fire. One woman looked toward the southern glow, then deliberately turned her back to it, tying a blanket around her shoulders, a choice made without words. The girl whispered, "They will keep walking west until the land folds them into its silence." He nodded. "And us? We walk different," she said. "We are not running from paper. We are defying its language." He understood. Their path was not just escape. It was refusal to be written. Then movement caught his eye to the east, figures on horseback, riding slow but certain, flanking the caravan's path from a distance. Not charging, not enforcing, watching. "Scouts," he said. "No," she replied. "Witnesses of the opposite kind. They watch to see who bends." He studied them. Riders moved like they weren't hunting, but marking, counting, cataloguing. She spoke low. "They will not strike the caravan. Too many eyes, too many lives. They strike those who walk beside and do not kneel." He looked west. "We move toward the pass before sun hits full." She nodded. "Yes, west, but not through the open cut. Through the stone path where horses fear footing." He glanced at her. "Dangerous ground. Safe from riders," she said. "Horses break faster than men on stone." He accepted. "Then show the way." They began moving, leaving their resting place. The caravan noticed from a distance, but did not call. They saw two figures walking not with them, not against, a parallel. A choice understood by those who had also walked away from towns. The riders to the east kept pace, silhouettes dark against the rising light. They didn't angle in. They simply mirrored, letting presence speak threat without action. She led them toward the stone pass, a narrow cut in the land where jagged rocks rose like walls carved by old water. The ground there was uneven, sharp, broken in layers that made horses wary. When they reached the entrance to the pass, he said, "This is where they will choose whether to follow." "They won't," she said. "Law follows straight lines. This is not straight." They entered the pass. The air inside was cooler, shadows lingering even as the sky brightened. Wind funneled through the narrow channel like breath through a flute, high and thin. The sound made the hair on the neck rise. He stepped carefully, boots scraping stone. The girl moved with more ease, her feet finding natural footholds like she had always known this terrain. They climbed a jagged shelf and paused. From here they could see the riders clearly, 5 of them now gathering at the edge of the pass but not entering. One rider dismounted, studying the rocks. He shook his head. "Horses won't hold here," he called to the others. "Too many breaks." One of the riders spat. "They'll break their legs before we do." The dismounted rider replied, "Then let them break. We will right what's left." The cowboy ground his teeth. "They want us crippled, so the paper can carry us back." She stood unmoved. "Paper takes the wounded first. That is Law's way, so we do not wound ourselves for them." He looked at her. "You speak like someone who already buried Law once." She turned her face to the wind. "Law buried many. I walked over graves until I stopped recognizing names. Down below, the riders conferred. They could not enter, but they would wait. Men with time and ownership always waited for others to break before stepping in." He asked, "What now?" She looked deeper into the pass, where the light narrowed into a thin silver line between rock. "Now we show them that waiting does not own us either." He nodded slowly. "Then we keep moving." She started up the next shelf. He followed, every step deliberate. The riders watched from below, their silhouettes growing small as the two figures disappeared further between the stone walls, beyond reach, beyond worth on any ledger. The pass swallowed them whole, not captured, not claimed, unwritten. The stone walls on either side towered high, worn smooth in places by old floods, jagged in others where the earth had torn itself open. The pass twisted, narrowing until only one person could move through at a time. The air thinned, cooler, echoing every footstep like a slow heartbeat. The girl moved ahead, one hand brushing the rock for balance. The cowboy followed, watching her placement, copying her weight shifts. His wound throbbed, but he bit down on the pain. A slip here meant more than a fall. It meant leaving a trail of blood for paper to follow. From behind, the wind carried faint sounds, riders repositioning, waiting at the mouth of the pass, too far to strike, close enough to claim the right to write whatever ending they wished if either of them stumbled. She stopped at a bend where the path split in two, one route narrow and steep, the other smoother, but more exposed. She studied both, silent. He watched her choose without asking which. She pointed to the sharper ascent. That way. The easy road invites watchers. He nodded, trusting. She began to climb, fingers digging into narrow stone grips. He followed, careful, his boots scraping. Halfway up, she paused. Her voice came low. "You fear falling." He exhaled slowly. "I fear falling into their pages." She looked back at him. "Then don't fall." A simple command, not cruel. Just truth. They reached the top of the ledge and pulled themselves onto a flat ridge. From here, the land to the west opened wide, hills rolling out like a slow wave, untouched by roads. No wagon trails, no fences, no smoke. He stood beside her, breathing heavy. "That is free land," he said. "No," she said. "That is land. Freedom is what we do on it." He understood then. Freedom wasn't a place. It was refusal. It was walking where law refused to follow and refusing to bow when law did. Behind them, the echo of a distant shout bounced through the stone. A rider's voice, distorted by the canyon, angry. They grow impatient. He looked over the edge. The riders below had dismounted. Two climbed up a different path, trying to reach higher ground. Determined, patient, like men who believed persistence was ownership. She watched them but did not tense. Let them climb. "If they reach the ridge," he began. She cut him off. "They reach only stone. Stone asks nothing. Paper cannot stick to it." The riders below slipped on loose gravel, cursing. One grabbed a jut of rock, barely holding. The other steadied himself, eyes locked on the ridge where the two figures stood. He shouted up, "Your path ends. Come down and sign. We'll mark it clean." The cowboy glanced at her. She said nothing, only turned her back on the men below and began walking west along the spine of the ridge. He hesitated one heartbeat, then followed. The rider below shouted again, louder. "If you keep walking, your names will be written as fugitives." She did not turn. "Then write a word they cannot pronounce." The wind caught her hair and carried her voice like a thread across the stone. The rider shouted again, voice thin with anger. "If you think walking makes you free, the county will remind you who holds the ink." She spoke without looking back. "Ink dries. Footsteps don't." The cowboy looked over his shoulder one last time. The riders were ants on stone now, shrinking with distance. Their rifles gleamed in the light, but their bullets couldn't reach this far. He faced forward again. They walked the ridge in silence, the sound of their footsteps merging with wind. With each step, the land ahead grew larger, and the world behind grew small. The pass narrowed behind them, closing like an old wound. She paused only once more, glancing west where the hills met the horizon. There, beyond sight, beyond law, lay nothing promised, nothing safe. She said, "This road has no end." He nodded. "Then we do not stop walking." She stepped forward. He matched her. And the pass behind them sealed their exit, like a book closing on a chapter no one else would ever read. The ridge stretched ahead like a spine of ancient stone. The sun lowered, painting the sky in harsh gold and shadow. Wind rushed over the rocks in long breaths, carrying dust and silence. She walked without hurry, steps steady, not fleeing, claiming. The cowboy followed, matching her rhythm, not leading, not trailing. A presence, not a leash. Halfway across the ridge, they reached a break in the stone. The land opened below in a wide valley, dry, unclaimed, untouched by road. At its center lay an old marker, a stone pillar worn smooth, half buried in dust. No writing on it, no ownership, just stone. She stopped beside it. He halted too, reading her stillness like a signal. She brushed her palm across the stone surface. "This," she said, "is how land remembers. Not through paper. Through what stands and does not bow." He nodded quietly. She turned to him. "When you spoke wife, you thought the word meant shield." "Yes," he said. She looked at the horizon. "When they spoke wife, they meant property." "Yes." She faced him fully. "And when I heard wife, I heard obedient, I heard rope." He lowered his gaze. "I know." She stepped closer, but not like possession, like confrontation. "You cannot erase what you spoke. You can only replace it by walking differently." He met her eyes. "Then tell me how to walk," she said. "Not as husband, not as savior, as something harder. Stand where I stand, not in front, not behind. Do you understand?" He nodded once. "Then show it." She watched him, waiting. He set down his rifle, then his coat. Then, without ceremony, he crouched and pressed his palm against the same stone she touched. He did not speak vow or claim. He let his hand rest there, open, not holding, not gripping, just present. He said, "I stand, not to own, to witness." She studied his posture, no boast in his stance, no claim, only alignment. She placed her palm beside his on the stone, not touching his hand, just close. The stone was cool beneath their skin. She said, "A witness walks even when no one writes it down." He nodded. "Then I walk, with no record but this." She looked out over the valley. "Then speak one thing," she said. "Speak what you carry so it does not rot in your chest." He drew a breath steady and unguarded. "I carried the word obedient like a tool. I thought it meant safety. I see now it means silence." I set it down. She listened, and wife. He looked at the horizon. "Wife was the word they gave me to make me believe I could protect you by owning you. I see now that ownership is fear with a coat of care." I set it down too. She considered him, then stepped back. The wind caught her hair, pulling it across her face. She did not brush it away. "Then what word remains?" she asked. He paused. "Not wife, not obedient, not mine. Only this, you walk, and I choose to walk where your footsteps leave no chain." She tilted her head. "That is not a claim." "No," he said, "it is a direction." She looked at the valley again. "Then you may stay in my shadow, but only if you do not try to shape it." He said simply, "I won't." The wind rose, circling around them, moving dust over the stone like a shroud. She lowered her hand from the marker and started walking again, down the ridge, toward the valley floor. He watched her take the first step. She did not look back to check if he followed. So he walked, not because she allowed, not because she belonged to him, but because freedom walked ahead, and witness meant moving in its wake without demanding thanks. Behind them, the stone pillar stood silent. No ink, no stamp, no spoken vows. Only two sets of footsteps in the dust, side by side, carrying no titles worth writing. They descended the ridge in silence, feet slipping on loose stone, but never faltering. The valley opened wide beneath them, stretching into raw land untouched by fences or ink. The air smelled different here, drier but honest, a place that asked nothing and promised nothing. At the valley floor, the earth shifted from rock to softer soil. Their footprints sank deeper now, leaving clear impressions behind. No road marked this place, no wagon had cut ruts through it. Each step wrote its own brief history, soon to be erased by wind. She stopped and crouched, pressing her palm flat against the ground. The soil was warm, living. It did not reject her. It did not claim her. It simply was. He lowered himself beside her, resting his good arm on his knee. The sun hung low, a coin of fire just above the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the valley. She said, "This land does not know the word wife." He nodded. "Or obedient." She traced a line in the dust with her finger, then smoothed it away. Dirt closed over the mark as if nothing had ever touched it. She stood again. "That is how we walk. Leave no chain. Leave no mark that law can use. Only breath. Only steps." He rose beside her. "And if someone follows—" She looked out at the horizon where the caravan's distant shapes could still be seen, small figures moving steadily west. "Then we do not run. We do not kneel. We walk until their maps tear, trying to name us." He watched her face. Softness had not returned there, but something else had. An unbroken steadiness that did not need to harden itself against every moment. He said, "You refuse ownership." She looked at him. "And you refuse to grasp. That is enough." The last light of day spilled across the land, turning dust into gold. The wind rose one final time, lifting their hair and carrying their scent to the empty world. Coyotes watched from a distance, eyes like small stars just before night took everything. She began walking again, each step deliberate. He matched her pace, not ahead, not behind, parallel, aligned. The valley accepted their movement without question. Behind them, their footprints stretched back across the earth. In time, wind would swallow them. Grass would grow. Rain would wash the ground clean. No record would remain to prove they ever walked there. And that, more than any signature or vow, was freedom. For a long moment, the world held still. Then she spoke, not looking at him. "If you ever say mine again, even in thought, I leave you at the next sunrise." He answered, quiet. "Then I will walk sunrise to sunset with only this truth. You belong only to your own footsteps." She gave the smallest nod. "Then keep walking." He did. They moved deeper into the valley, twilight swallowing their figures in slow dusk. No promises were spoken, no names exchanged, no titles clung to their heels, just two silhouettes moving across a land that would forget them gladly, and in forgetting, set them free. And somewhere far behind, in a town where ink still dried on ledgers, someone would look at an empty line next to a half-written name and realize that some stories do not end in ownership. Some stories end in walking, and walking has no witness except the wind. If this road left a mark on you, if you felt the dust, the chain, the breath of freedom in their steps, then stay with us. More paths wait beyond the next ridge. Subscribe and walk the next story beside us. The land is wide, and no paper can stop a story once it starts moving.